views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, good evening. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. You probably know by now, this is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers and reporters and editors and journalists and filmmakers and photographers, anybody who puts something out in and about the borough of the Bronx. We try to incorporate them into the program. And this evening, in our second segment, we have really one of the most exciting up-and-coming Latino musicians who has her third single out, and that's going to be exciting. I'm not going to say her name yet, but a lot of young people especially know exactly who she is. But we're going to start off and do some very serious stuff with our good friend Zach Williams. He's the senior state politics reporter for City and State New York. So we will say good evening to you, Zach Williams. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We always appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day. And I will tell you, I was going to tell you this off camera, but I will tell you, City and State New York, that magazine is such a great publication that I read it cover to cover every week. And even the power list, you find stuff out about people. It's just wonderful. And of course, the journalism is at a very high level. Thank you. Now, how's it? That a good way to start?
That's very flattering. Always knew you were a good man.
That's right. Anyway, let's just get started. You're up there in Albany. You cover politics. We have a new governor out of the blue, so to speak. I guess that's a pun in some form. Tell me a little bit about what the climate is like. Is the tone different in Albany, or really, look, the structures are there? She's the governor, and now we move ahead. What do you think?
Well, in normal times, Gary, this is really the slow season in Albany. You know, they're out of session after June. Usually this is a time when a governor is getting the state budget ready for the upcoming legislative session that begins in January. But this year, everything's different. You know, Governor Andrew Cuomo resigned after a whole litany of scandals. And now Governor Kathy Hochul, as lieutenant governor, has had just about 2 months to really establish herself as the 2022 Democratic race for governor really gets underway. I think she's had some notable successes in her first weeks, notably expediting the distribution of COVID-19 relief funds for tenants and undocumented people across the state, including in the Bronx. And she's also had some pretty good success in kind of inheriting Cuomo's political network, if you were. You've heard of her having fundraisers with people on the political right, like John Catsimatidis. She's been giving a lot of attention as well to the political left. She recruited Brian Benjamin for lieutenant governor, and she's really paid a lot of attention to New York City in particular. You know, there's a lot of voters down there, and they really have an outsized voice in the Democratic Party, especially in places like Brooklyn and the Bronx, where there's a lot of minority voters in particular. So I think, you know, Governor Kathy Hochul has really faced a big challenge. She had to move fast to deal with a whole bunch of problems, Hurricane Ida, speeding up rent relief, so many things. And I think, you know, anyone that really thought that she couldn't handle the job has really got to look at her first 45 days, 2 months in office and say, well, she's really met the tests thus far. That said, Attorney General Tish James might jump in the race anytime. So things can change really quickly in Albany.
Yeah, we're going to get through this November, and then we'll talk about it next spring and November.
So many things going on.
So it sounds like that you believe that things are getting done, whereas with Andrew Cuomo, he would apportion out his time, his own projects, things he cared about, things he could control. And you're saying in this case, she's trying to be the governor for everybody, which is her job, and get a number of things done and, you know, check them off her, you know.
Well, if you need to look at the difference between Cuomo and Hochul, look no further than the rent relief program and the excluded workers fund. Because Cuomo dragged his feet on those issues. He also dragged his feet on appointing board members for the Cannabis Control Board, set up a legal weed market. Those are three things: rent relief, the Excluded Workers Fund, setting up a legal weed market, all these things Cuomo dragged his feet on, and Hochul got straight to work on it because she really wanted to show something tangible in her first 45 years.
And more to come on the environment bill, which people in the Bronx are very interested in. I mean, she got that done.
The environment.
The environment, which we're going to talk about in a second. I just want to ask you what you wrote about it in the sidebar piece. What is the status of a potential impeachment report from the Assembly? Is it one of these things that time will just let it?
Well, we live in perpetual suspense. We live in perpetual suspense. The Assembly impeachment investigation is supposedly wrapping up as we speak. A final report could be released any day. The rumors right now are sometime in October. And that only leaves a week and a half to go. So it could happen any day. I think the expectations are it will largely substantiate what the Attorney General has already found about alleged sexual harassment and a cover-up of COVID-19 in nursing homes, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Is the kind of the impact of it, or the news of it, do you expect that to be heavier towards sexual harassment, which people have already heard the story, or potentially more detail on the nursing home scandal and the fudging of those numbers? Which, when I think about it, I'm like, he was championing that whole thing, and frankly, a lot of people know my mom died of COVID in a nursing home during that early period. And so, I mean, it's a personal thing for me. And then to find out that the numbers were fudged, are you kidding? Anyway, sorry, that was my personal.
You raise a really important point, which is, Tish James did 2 investigations, one about nursing homes. Remember that so many months ago, and then the one about sexual harassment. That's 2, but that's only 2 of a whole litany of scandals that helped bring the governor down. There was also preferential COVID-19 tests for people close to him, like his brother. There was also the book deal and how that might have tied into the nursing home data. And then there's the Mario Cuomo bridge. So the Assembly impeachment report is supposed to touch on these. It sounds like they didn't dig up much about the bridge, but they really could shed some new light on the book issue in particular. How was his multi-million-dollar book deal related to this whole issue with waiting months and months and months to really reveal how many people died in nursing homes?
I want to dispense with that because we'll probably talk about it when it comes out. But you also wrote a very interesting story about the 2021 State Environmental Scorecard. And of course, in the Bronx, the environment is a very big story, which state lawmakers ranked the best in the environment. And in a way, I felt like there weren't any surprises. Democrats, got the 90s. I think Carl Hasty of the Bronx got 90%. I was a little disappointed that the Assembly in the Bronx was at 87%, which was below Queens and Manhattan. But so what do you make of this environmental report as far as how well the state is doing to protect our environment?
I mean, I think this environmental scorecard from the New York League of Conservation Voters should be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt. This rates lawmakers on how much they support the bills this organization supports. That said, they're a widely respected conservation group, and I think what they say about lawmakers says a lot about how much they're in line with environmentalists on some really big issues facing the state. This includes efforts to limit toxic chemicals in water and consumer products, as well as kind of bigger issues like pollution, reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling because in the Bronx, we're thinking about the peaker plants in the South Bronx. That's numero uno on our list, but go ahead.
Right, and I think a big takeaway is, Democratic lawmakers by and large got like perfect scores or something close to that. But historically, you got to remember environmental issues have typically gotten a lot of support from Republicans as well, but more and more with polarization across the country and in state politics, and you might even say the leftward movement of the Democratic Party, maybe environmental groups too. I thought it was really surprising how few Republicans scored highly on this. You had a few out on Long Island, but that was about it.
Hard not to notice that Democrats were all in the 90s and Republicans, the leaders, some of them were in the 40s. I want to move to one other thing, which sounds like it's not about the Bronx, but when we look at what we had with Yankee Stadium, and I go look at what they're talking about in Tampa, what they're talking about in Las Vegas. You did a little work on the Buffalo Bills stadium. The notion, and this is again sensitive to the Bronx, how much money do you put into public money? Do you put into the creation of a stadium, and then what do you get back for that investment? Of course, with the Yankees, we're still talking about that in the Bronx. What's happening up in Buffalo?
Well, in Buffalo, the state, the Buffalo Bills, and the county government are negotiating how much public support the Buffalo Bills will get for a new stadium. Now, obviously, the Bills are loved in upstate New York, and especially in their hometown of Buffalo, whether or not you call that upstate or not. But I will say that, what it really echoes is what we've seen across the country, including in the Bronx with the Yankees and elsewhere, which is, localities are willing to spend hundreds of millions, if not more money, to keep teams, from moving to other places. And, one interesting thing about the Buffalo Bills, though, is people are not arguing the economic benefits so much. That's kind of refreshing, just because we've seen in city after city, local officials argue, well, you got to spend money because the economic benefits of a professional sports team are just too important. Nah, study after study after study. This goes back down.
You
don't pay for themselves.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir in the Bronx.
So, A, for honesty, I guess, out there in Western New York, and with the governor saying we just love the Bills too darn much, and the economic benefits are secondary, if not non-existent in the grand scheme of things. But, here we go again. They're still going to spend millions and millions of dollars. The only question is how much it might be to keep the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, no matter what economic cost it brings to taxpayers across the state.
Yeah, and these owners, they know it, and they just like George Steinbrenner was threatened to go to New Jersey in Tampa. They're talking about playing half their games in Montreal for the Tampa Bay Rays.
It's an emotional attachment. You can't imagine the Yankees outside the Bronx, and you can't imagine the Bills right now outside of Buffalo. But we need to realize these are emotional investments, not economic development investments.
Zach Williams, we have an emotional attachment to city and state New York. We're tied at the hip. We love when you come on, and when all your colleagues. I think Jeff Colton is going to be on our other program, Bronx Talk, next week to talk about the elections. We're going to keep turning to you because you're great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. There you go. Zach Williams, senior state politics reporter for City and State New York. We're going to take a short break and then a really cool segment with a really hot Bronx musician. She is making it happen. Don't go away.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans. struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. We switch gears now, and we're going to talk music, Bronx music, Latin music, and bring on one of the hottest new stars in Latin music. And she, of course, is from the Bronx, which is why we brought her on the Bronx Buzz. Let me say good evening to Séssi. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
We're doing great, and we're doing even greater because you decided to join us. Now, let's see. Billboard called you one of 20 Latina artists to discover. They said before 2020 ends. It took us a little while, but we got to you. And that's because you've, let's see, you were featured on the cover of Especialito. That's
yes.
And the photo, and there it is, a cover story. And you've done a lot of things. The most recent is putting out your third single, which is called 2C. Let's just talk a little bit about your background, a little bit about the Bronx, and what does growing up in the Bronx and how has it fueled the creation of your music?
Well, I'm Latina, Puerto Rican and Cuban from the Bronx. My mother is Cuban, my dad is Puerto Rican. And growing up as a kid, being from a Bronx native, New York hustle, I swear it has inspired me to be this artist today. My dad was a producer in the 90s for dance music, so freestyle, house music. So as a kid, I was in all the concerts. Since 5 years old, I used to perform all over the Bronx Puerto Rican Day Parade, all the pageants, the talent shows. My mother had me all over the place, and so did my dad, So I think that being a Bronx native, seeing J-Lo, right, in the stars, and also having like influences like La India and Mark Anthony, and these people, they're from New York, they're performing in Madison Square Garden. That always has given me an opportunity to say, you know what, they can do it, I can do it,
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic.
It sounds like you felt natural about it from the beginning. Like for some young people, they grow up and they learn, they say, oh, maybe I could do this. Sounds like you just said, this is who I am and part of my life from the get-go. And of course, I'm prejudiced about it. The Bronx fuels that. All the music came from here. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so blessed to be from New York and from the Bronx. And I tell you, from the way that I dress to my accent to my attitude to how I carry my energy, it all stems from the culture of what I grew up around,
Let's talk about the two prior singles. Let's talk about and then we'll talk about, and we'll even share a little clip of the 2C video, which is a lyrical a clip. But just tell me about the creation of the music. Do you create stuff on your own? Do you work with other people? Do you go in the studio and say, let's try it out? Do you have something ready to go? Let's talk about the process that gets you to where you are.
Well, the music process is my favorite thing. I write and I sing. I vocal produce as well. I'm very hands-on in all of my production and also vocal structure concepts for songs. I do work with writers. There was another writer that was a part of this who has been part of a lot of my projects and my singles that have released. I always love the process of collaboration. I think that music is formulated with different ideas, and everybody just puts their 2 cents in, you know. But 2C was created, which, by the way, I'm in the Milli Club now. You know, first I was in 1,000 streams, now I'm in the Milli streams, and I'm just
saw
so
that.
blessed.
I mean, that's a million streams on Spotify. It's hard to
Yes,
imagine that number, isn't it? That all those people.
yes. Yeah, we're almost at 2 million now, but
Yeah.
you know, just being and even when Latin Billboard featured me, I mean, my dreams are coming true. Soon they're gonna be 15 million, 15 billion, you know, that's the idea. But creating this fan base that organically on even on Instagram and my fans and talking about spirituality and body positivity and Ducey is especially body positivity.
All right, I was going to ask you about let's talk about that, and then we'll throw to the clip. What is important to you? It's not only about making music, and certainly you would mind making a couple of dollars at it. That's nice, but you have other ideas, and this to me is also a Bronx story. This is who we are. We got to talk about what's important, right?
Yes, you know, for me, I've always been very artistic. My favorite artist is Lady Gaga. I've always looked at her and said, you know what? She did it. I can do it. And I'm so inspired by her style, how she came up, right? Being from the city and just being expressive. And so this record, Tusi, is just like that. Like I'm very like alter ego. I like to have different alter egos in my music and just hypnotizing men, of course, because I'm all about the power of the woman power. So that's what Tusi is about. So it's a hallucination of a man who falls in love with a woman and we hook you guys. That's what we do.
Yeah. All right. I saw this for the first time earlier today. Yes, I'm hooked. Okay. Tusi from Séssi. She's from PX. Let's take it.
Tengo buena dieta, yo no me como cualquiera. Tus fantasías cobran vida con la nena. Me llaman bebé como si me conociera, pero no sabe qué le espera. Tú sí, cama y acción, ven y agárrame este útil. Entra en calor, ven y bésame la titis pa' la tensión. Tú no sabes qué te espera. Una conejita pero fiera.
All right, there it is. We gave him a sample. We want him to click Spotify and get the whole thing. But let's talk about body image and what is important to you for women. You think that we need an injection, so to speak, so women have a realization about it, right? Talk a little
Absolutely. For me, being an artist, being a performer, I'm always constantly having to work on my body, eat the right things, look great for the camera, right? But I have a story too. Growing up, I'm Latina. We're thick in all the right places, right? And so I've always been that. I've always been chubby. I was always, overweight per se. And when I really dived into doing this full time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to lose all this weight. And I dropped, I was almost 200 pounds and I dropped to how I am now. And most people they look at me, they're like, what? You're so fit. How did you do it? And it's a mental thing. And I'm not saying that, thick isn't beautiful. It's great. It's absolutely beautiful. But I talk about body positivity because all of us, we love women. We have to love ourselves from different, standpoints. And for me, body positivity is owning who you are, owning your body and doing what you love,
And I'm going to inject looks are one thing, but health is another. And let's face it, I mean, we have an issue. I mean, I deal with issues here all the time with obesity, and so you can be a bigger woman or bigger person, but if being healthy is really the bottom line to me, that's the way it sounds. And you talk about eating right. I'm sure you work out a little bit, in order to be able to do what you do. So it's not only it's always this way with the Bronx people. It's not only about entertainment. It's not only about, doing the thing, being out front, whatever. It's also about helping people improve their lives, right? I mean, that is what the bottom line. Now, do you create a lot of stuff? Like, do you say to yourself, I got 15 different ideas, or do you really work on one, track at a time? Or do you go in there and do you do it at home? Do you go into a studio?
I have a studio. Yeah, we have a studio. I have a production company. We have a studio. It's all about, for me, music is about energy. So I like to stay focused because us as musicians, we can get sidetracked. But for me, going out, hanging with friends, having these life experiences really, really help. Even advice with girlfriends and all that stuff, community really helps with my music. I'm always connecting with my fans too on horoscopes and spirituality, right? And that also helps me with my music as well. So that's essentially how we start. I'm living this life. I'm inspired daily. I come into the studio. We work on a beat, kind of like inspires the rhythm, right? And I go first with the melody. And then from the melody, then I dive down into the story. But everything is a process. First it's a start, and then it's a finish.
You know what really is interesting to me about that is that you reach out to a lot of people. You say you talk about horoscopes or other things that are interested in you. And then I'm a promotions and publicity marketing guy. And then you go and look and say, well, this is why I have 1 million, because I'm not just a music person, I'm a full person.
Correct.
And I'm presenting myself. We're presenting ideas. We're sharing ideas. These are the things I believe in, right? Am I hitting it right? That's
yeah.
Where
it's the rawness, and I say that's the Bronx in me, right? That's how we finesse as people, right? Wherever we go, whether we're in Miami or LA, they hear us, they feel our energy. We got that energy, and that's what I like to do when I connect with my fans, which is why I do the horoscope, and I get really to get in tune with them when I do my lives. I give them good readings,
How should people connect with you personally? Should they send you an email, go to a website? What should they do?
I'd say Instagram. Follow me on Séssi Official. That's SESSI Official. And for my music for Spotify and YouTube, you can find me on there as well, Séssi, SESSI. But I do have some more music coming out and more English as well. So it's both a balance, because I am both languages are my strong specialty.
So I'm English speaking, obviously. I'm going to do something, and you could turn me down if you want. Could you sing something, rap something, do something, anything right now?
Yeah, I can sing.
We got about 30. Go ahead.
Sure. The first single that we had coming out, I could sing a little snippets from that.
Sure.
It's called Deja que te lleve.
You need a rhythm? I could do the rhythm.
Deja que te lleve a otro lugar. Tú sabes cómo es. Deja que te lleve a otro lugar. So pretty much I'm saying let it just flow. Right. Let you just flow.
You did that right in time. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx couldn't be prouder. We have a litany of great musicians, Latina musicians, go through generations. And Séssi is now right in there in a long line of great Bronx musicians. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Bronx Buzz. You're rocking with Séssi.
I never said it before. We are rocking with Séssi. That's what we're doing. Thank you so much. Also, thanks to Zach Williams from City and State, New York. I told you we do, from one side of the world to the other, political side and then the music side. But that's why we're buzzing in the borough of the Bronx. So we'll see you around town. We'll be back next week. Next week, we're going to run some reruns of some of our best stuff. So check that out next week. And on and on and on. See you around town.